Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back. If you don't know me, my name is Catherine, and if you do know me, I'm so grateful that you could make it here or make it back from wherever it is on the internet that you happen to drop in from. So I don't usually do explicit commentary on people. Usually we do a bit of a mix between an examination slash a discussion. But yeah, we have a lot of fun around here. Either way, you do not have to be familiar with this creator in order to participate in the discussion. Whether you are a religious or not, familiar with the particular person in question or not, this should be very interesting. So sincerely, I hope you stick around and I will be reading your thoughts and opinions. Either way, I think we can begin. Let's go.
My name's Trish and I brought chili tofu.
The guillotine, and that's just for the portion size. Next,
Roasted garlic and truffle chorizo pasta.
the court will plant 55 trees in your honor.
My name's Gina and I have made banana oat cookies.
Again, she too brought 8 cookies for a party of 15 people. You are to be buried alive. You and your landlord. And both your Uber drivers. Next.
We are looking at a creator here who became famous by pretending to be a judge. Millions of people loved her for it. I mean, speaking fully for myself, I certainly, as a fan of hers, loved her for it. They loved the irony, they loved her antiques, but particularly when contained within with the sharp yet absurd hypothetical reality of a courtroom theater.
Death by public stoning for you and your lawyer, and your prosecutor gets a raise. Next.
They loved being both witness to the sentencing hearings and, strangely enough, also victim to the judge's review.
Hi, I'm Kristen and I brought the pumpkin pie. Ooh, that looks good. Did you bake it? No.
Seize her. Cut her throat. Next.
What you need to understand about this creator is that the extremity was requisite to her viral consequence. On her page, we had punishments like the brazen bull. I remember seeing the peer of anguish. What I really appreciated actually about her, honestly still like about her, is that she seems to have a particular sympathy for medieval torturing devices. Anyways, it made things very entertaining. If you managed to produce something highly exceptional, if you managed to win her over, you could be rewarded with the keys to the city. That is how good she was.
Pasta, white pasta, red pasta, chicken, paneer.
The keys to the city, darling, and your lawyer and your Uber driver gets a 2-week all-expense paid trip to the Bahamas. Next.
People would literally submit their potluck dishes, to be the object of her ire, to be judged, to be scrutinized, and ultimately for the benefit of all of our entertainment. Every video revolved around judgment, consequence, standards, social evaluation, sometimes social humiliation. And yet, because all of it was enveloped in irony, in theatricality.
My name is Josie and I brought mozzarella sticks and spring rolls.
But did you make it? The court finds you innocent of all charges. You are free to go, but we are watching you. Good night.
And this honestly, refreshingly unapologetic judicial satire, nobody really found it threatening. And then something happened. Suddenly, the woman who had spent years pretending that judgment was real, all of a sudden began speaking as though judgment, right? Not just in the hypothetical sense, but in the morally existential sense.
Hell is a place of God's wrath. But the reason why there are people who don't have no respect or no reverence for God is because the world has taught us to fear the prisoner and not fear the creator. Satan is not a king, he's your cellmate. He was never a king, he is your cellmate. And if you don't play your cards right, you're going to end up right down there with him. Hell ain't pretty, ain't cute. And if you really want to know how bad hell is, read Psalms 88. Read the book of Revelation about God's wrath. The Bible says that there were things coming up out the earth stinging people. Some creatures coming up out the earth. So the question is, if those things are coming up on the earth, where are they coming from? In the book of Exodus, they said that the darkness was so strong that the people could feel it, which means the darkness is alive. In hell, they hate you. In hell, you're alone. It's excruciating sickness, thirst, disease. The Bible says there's maggots in hell, and maggots like to feed on what is dead. It will be feeding on you. In the book of Isaiah, it says that maggots are your blankets.
Actually was real. And suddenly, no one was laughing anymore. You guys, what fascinates me, actually what continues to fascinate me about this creator, about Shay Forever, is that informing all of the comedy was something surprisingly stable. And that is an unusually developed intuition for consequence. I mean, her entire platform revolved around a remarkably uncomplicated premise, that actions matter, that standards exist, and that ignorance is not an excuse for weak common sense. Some people need to be disabused a little bit more harshly, especially of those more egregious ignorances, especially as it concerns the realities of potluck expectations.
Hi, my name's Alex and I brought a peppermint cake.
Death by immurement for your prosecutor's entire firm and all their Uber drivers. Next.
I'm talking about how you contribute to the interest of everybody else's culinary experience. You know, when it comes... Okay, I've been to many a picnic, a potluck, an event, and yes, sometimes it can get that serious. Certain behaviors cannot be glazed over. And the thing is, you know, the internet agreed. It's not enough that we won't invite you next time. No, they must. That's the thing about Shay. That's what she understood, right? There needs to be a teaching moment, one that survives beyond the embarrassment and intergenerational correction.
And I brought wine.
Clearly for yourself, the pair of anguish for you and your lawyer. Next.
Because yes, some of these things are that serious, and you know, it's the internet, okay? It's nice to make a joke out of these things. I think it's obvious I have a bias. I have always enjoyed her content. I think she has such a unique sense of humor. I'd watched her content for years before, well, before the reason for this video, before what people are calling her now psychotic phase, because one day you are watching this familiar figure, this familiar content creator who, you know, brought humor to your day, sentenced somebody to life imprisonment for bringing, like, I don't know, like dry, ultra-processed diet pasta to a family gathering, and then the next day, the same woman is speaking with profound urgency about God, eternity, judgment, salvation, you know, spiritual warfare, the condition of the human soul. I mean, you guys, even for me, as somebody who has always been sympathetic to her, as somebody who, as you guys know, obviously shares her faith, okay, it was a lot all at once. Even for me, it was a little bit disorienting. And so at first glance, you know, all of these things seem to be unrelated realities. But after thinking about this, after preparing for this video and really giving it some thought, I'm not entirely convinced that they are. Because when somebody decides all of a sudden to reorganize their life around an alternative hierarchy of consequences, what has fundamentally changed?
I need to come on here and be honest with you lot, man. Because I know you guys noticed I have not been on social media and I just not been saying anything. But I'm going to say it now. Now, I've been walking with the Lord correctly since last year, July. When I was in a tough place and when the world turned its back on me, it was God who held me by the hand and picked me up. So I just started taking the Lord very seriously in my walk with God, very seriously. And I'm finding that certain things that I used to enjoy, like being on social media, I don't. But the one thing I do know is that through God, I do have influence on this platform. And I feel like I should be using this platform for something productive and something that represents God in the correct way, and not just to do food reviews, you know, because at the end of the day, this is not even my platform. This is God's platform. He was the one who made, you know, this platform have over 1 million followers in 3 months. I didn't do anything. It was by his favor and grace why all of this happened. And I feel like this platform, you know, like how in the Bible, how the king gave his servant talents. I feel like this is my talent that God gave me, and that I'm expected to do something productive that represents God in the right way with what he has given me. I also believe that there are people out there that are also struggling in their faith, and I have insight that I could help a lot of people. And I feel like I'm wasting my talents, which I don't want to do anymore. So this video is just to let you guys know that the food review videos and stuff like that, I'm not going to post them anymore. I love you guys very much though. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for all the support that you guys have given me, man. And the love and all the influencers that's made videos and send them to me to review. Like, shout out to each and every one of you, man. If you don't want to follow the page anymore, I completely understand. I don't hate you, because at the end of the day, I wouldn't follow a page if they're posting content I don't want to see. So that makes sense. But at the end of the day, I just don't feel like God gave me this platform to come on here and to basically give people imaginary death sentence for the rest of my life.
Is it the object of judgment, or is it the scale? And it's important we try at the very least, even if we don't even if we don't sympathize with the change, it's important at least that we interrogate it. Because in this case, the satirical hypothetical has been displaced by religious existentialism. The fictional courtroom has been replaced by a presumed religious reality with consequences that impose rather than humor for their implications on the audience. I mean, all of a sudden, we are talking about homophobia. We are talking about, like, literally, we're talking about hell. How to talk to God if God talks to you. And all in all, it just feels so burdened, but also I think for an audience that had not originally come to her page to, be indulged such things, it feels avoidably offensive. It's disorienting, I think, because, the irony has disappeared, but the architecture remains. And this is where things become philosophically interesting, okay? Because the more I revisit her content, the more I think about the way people are talking about her now, I am becoming increasingly unconvinced that her transformation was as abrupt as people claim. Think about it this way, okay? The woman who once organized her content around judgment still organizes her content around judgment. The woman who once spoke constantly about consequences still speaks constantly about consequences. The woman who once presided over this fictional tribunal, right? This hypothetical niche that she managed to curate, she still seems deeply concerned with accountability. The only real difference I'm seeing here is in stakes. Now there is a real implicative urgency in everything she is saying. It extends beyond just just the satire. It bleeds into ideology, into politics, into religion, into everything. And it becomes so heavy, it becomes so burdened, it becomes so accusatory, because everything, let's be honest, when she criticizes, she cuts deep. And you feel it? It's just now, obviously, it's no longer funny. Because before, the courtroom was a joke, but now she appears convinced of it as a description. That distinction might explain why, audiences who once adored her suddenly find themselves uncomfortable. You guys, it's going to be so ironic for me to say this, but I have noticed something about intellectual culture online. And perhaps every civilization eventually becomes disposed to the same thing, but people generally admire intelligence insofar as intelligence remains explanatory. We appreciate the learned, as we should, insofar as their learning better helps us understand society, complexity, helps us improve our circumstances, our economic situations, our mental situations. We appreciate the type of learning that helps to articulate truths, realities, abstractions, okay, as long as they can remain comfortably theoretical. Knowledge is attractive. Wisdom, regardless of whatever religious distinction it originated from, is respectable. That is why, actually, when I analyze ancient symbolism on this channel, when I talk about all of the different things I like to talk about, I don't restrict informing you of their presence, right, beyond biblical instances. Even though, obviously, yes, I'm a Christian, I do think that, these resonances are kind of universal, and the knowledge gleaned from those resonances are universally respectable. Most of the world can universally recognize that, most insight suffered for is valuable. It is attractive, but up to a point.
Joe Weller is definitely going through religious psychosis, but the scariest thing about...
Shut up, just shut up. Religious psychosis, is this a new buzzword? Why? Oh, you guys latch onto something that's trending, a new word, something that's in fashion, and you just... all of a sudden, everyone's a psychologist, a therapist. Not 1 degree, you haven't got not 1 degree, but you're diagnosing people. Everybody wants to be a therapist. You just couldn't wait. He was itching. It was like vomit. Religious psychosis. You lot stop with the AI buzzwords, man, and touch grass or something. I'm pretty sure a fully grown, competent adult doesn't need your help in choosing what he wants to believe.
What I'm saying is that there is always a threshold, there's always a line, there's always a limit. Sometimes we call it an Overton window. Basically, it is a boundary for which the audience's admiration eventually starts to decay. The philosopher Kierkegaard actually observed something similar. He argued that truth becomes most threatening precisely when it stops being speculative, right? Abstract, theoretical. When it starts becoming existential, that is when we have problems. And I think you guys, he was absolutely spot on. Abstract truth, it is like you guys know me, it is fascinating, but applied truth, it is invasive. You will find in philosophical disciplines, although obviously I'm not a philosopher, I'm a computer scientist, but even at varsity, going to the humanities sections, it is easy to find yourself in a lot of discussions with people, who actually enjoy discussing mortality, but you will soon find out that few people like being reminded that they're going to die. Everyone enjoys discussing morality. Few people enjoy being morally implicated in something or another, and it's the same thing with God. A lot of people enjoy discussing God as an idea, and I remember a couple of years ago when I was really into Jordan Peterson, that that was, I mean, it was transformative to me, but it was not really that much. It wasn't very transformative to my faith because it is a completely different set of experiential implications to enjoy encountering God, right? It's I'm sorry. It feels good, right, to look at something, examine something consequential, but at a distance. If Peterson has taught me anything, for all of my disagreements with him, it is that God, in my opinion, is a reality that sells best, that retains cultural virality when that reality is interesting enough to build and inspire moral frameworks, philosophical reflection, aesthetic symbolism. But again, God as a reality must remain abstract enough to retain plausible deniability. This is important to ensure that any ideas we pull from God, not necessarily as a person, but as an abstract, right, as a theoretical, those ideas need to retain malleability, right, interpretive variance. Everyone enjoys discussing transcendence, but few enjoy the possibility that transcendence, once it marks you, it might make demands, or at the very least, demands beyond the intellectual's discipline to read and to encounter within contained discovery. Because what's so interesting about even the most ancient of esteemed intellectuals who have been accused of psychosis is that almost all of them endure periods of extreme studiousness, right, of severe contemplation, and at some point or another, those periods actually earn them respect for the sincerity of that studious effort. That pattern appears frequently throughout history, right? The accusation of insanity follows periods of obsession, of immersion, of serious study, periods where the person becomes so captured by the subject of their contemplation that they cease merely observing it and begin orienting themselves around it. For me, I don't know, I think there's something sacred. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about this differently, but I think there's something beautiful. I think there's something honorable in allowing a devotion to consume you through the honor of trying to understand it. Society, though, only tends to celebrate devotions for as long as the conclusions, right, drawn from those devotions remain socially manageable. But there's nothing socially manageable about something that has capacity to capture someone so aggressively. I think that is why certain forms of faith are so socially inflaming. When Paul begins preaching Christ after years of persecuting Christians, just interrupts him, with one of the most devastating accusations in all of scripture, in my opinion. Paul, thou art beside thyself. Much learning doth make thee mad. This is in Acts 26 verse 24. Notice the accusation, Paul is not accused of ignorance. He is accused of excess, his learning has apparently carried him beyond the boundaries of acceptable reality. Anyone, honestly, who begins becoming, convinced of a reality that extends beyond the social consensus eventually receives some version of the same diagnosis. You have taken this too far. One of the greatest psychological investigations of religious conversion actually comes from William James in The Varieties of Religious Experience. James noticed that many religious converts were not escaping reality, but actually responding to reality much more intensely than before. And that was the condition that isolated them from public relatability, because everybody alive and conscious is in a state of response to reality. But not everybody is responding to the same degree, right? Not everybody is actioning themselves out about the world with commensurate intensity. And so James writes, the individual becomes conscious that this higher part is coterminous and continuous with a more. That capitalized more is fascinating. James is essentially describing people who become convinced that reality is deeper than it was previously perceived. And what is genuinely, to me, disturbing about this description is that it can be reasonably applied to, sufferers of psychosis and to people genuinely persuaded against most of what they previously thought they knew. What is even more chilling is that some people appear trapped between both realities, caught somewhere between revelation and projective delusion, right? Insight and instability. And often, and this is honestly what saddens me and frustrates me, they have no one willing to understand them beyond psychoanalyzing them. No one willing to genuinely engage their claims beyond the same safe intellectual distance, irony, humor, or abstraction that the individual themselves once used before becoming consumed by the reality that they now insist exists. And that leads us to a cultural sentiment that appears increasingly whenever whenever belief enters public discourse. My beliefs don't require that you believe in them. And, you know, in most contexts, it's hard to find a context that this does not feel reasonable. But yes, in most contexts, this feels polite, it feels reasonable. But Christianity has always occupied, you know, an unusually uncomfortable position in relation to that statement. Because Christianity is not merely a collection of private preferences. It is, at minimum, a claim about reality. And I can't speak for like all of the other religions, but truly most religions are, like, these are, all of them, honestly, all of them are claims about reality. I am someone who has been accused of having some pretty hardline beliefs, okay? And I don't blame them, but I also have no problem with that whatsoever. And so when I look at a case like Shay's, I often find myself wondering, questioning how convinced somebody truly is by what they claim to believe about reality, particularly if that belief has existential implications, if they feel absolutely no urgency to conscientize people to a reality that they genuinely believe that people will suffer for ignoring.
I also believe that there are people out there that are also struggling in their faith, and I have insight that I could help a lot of people. And I feel like I'm wasting my talents, which I don't want to do anymore.
I mean, if I genuinely believe that a bridge was about to collapse, right, my silence would not be compassion. It would just be negligence. If I genuinely believe that someone is walking like head first towards catastrophe, my indifference to that would not be like tolerance, okay? It would be egregious abandonment. Obviously, you guys know what I believe. You know that I'm pretty hardened, okay, right now in my area of faith. And so I don't approach this investigation from a place of neutrality. I think it's often an illusion, especially when you are passing at some of the sorest questions of existence. You know, I have a bias in Shay's favor. I also have a bias, I think more importantly, towards what she believes in. I'm a Christian. My faith informs my convictions, my interpretations, and builds the filter through which I perceive reality. But I do think that there is a question that transcends even like my faith traditions, anybody's faith traditions, perhaps even religion itself. And it is this: if you are truly persuaded of something, okay, if you believe you've genuinely encountered a reality, a truth, right, that has liberated you from ignorance, from despair, of existential instability, then what does it say about the sincerity of your conviction if you do not believe that that freedom is transferable to those you know are suffering under the same conditions that you once suffered under? And I don't only ask this of Christianity. I ask this of every worldview, every philosophical system, every religious or spiritual framework, every architecture that attempts to diagnose the human condition and offer humanity some form of restoration. Because ultimately the purpose of any system of meaning is not merely to create intellectual architecture, not merely to provide aesthetically pleasing explanations of existence. It is to answer the fundamental human questions, right? How do we become free? How do we become whole? How do we live with suffering, injustice, mortality, or the paralyzing fear, the crippling, for some people, awareness of their own consciousness? Every system, whether religious or secular, is attempting in some way to secure humanity's internal and, by extension, external freedom through peace and flourishing. And I feel like most of us want that. We claim to all desire a world where human beings are less enslaved to despair, to violence, to confusion, to internal fragmentation. And perhaps that is why investigations into religious psychosis are so complex, because the search for meaning occupies an incredibly delicate space, like in the human psyche. The same psychological mechanisms that produce revelation can also produce delusion. The same human imaginations capable of constructing illusions is so the faculty that constructs art, poetry, discovers scientific theories, witnesses epiphanies, forms moral visions, contemplates realities beyond your immediate perceptual view. I don't know, you guys. I just don't think, the most important distinction is between those who claim to have encountered divine reality and those who haven't. I think it's between experiences and encounters that make a person more capable of loving reality versus experiences that make one retreat from it.
One of my favorite stories is in a mother's womb where two babies, and one turns to the other and says, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" And the other replies, "Why, of course, there has to be something after delivery. Maybe we're here to prepare ourselves for what will be later." Nonsense, said the first. There's no life after delivery. What kind of life would that be? I don't know, said the second. But there'll be more light than here. Maybe we'll walk with our legs and eat with our mouths. Maybe we'll have other senses we can't understand now. First goes, that's ridiculous. Walking is impossible, and eating with our mouths, that's absurd. The umbilical cord is what scientifically supplies nutrition and all that we need, but it's far too short. Life after delivery is to be logically excluded. The second says, what if it's just different than it is here? Maybe we don't need that physical cord anymore. The first goes, okay, if there were life after delivery, then tell me, why has no one ever come back from there? Delivery is the end of life, and in the after delivery is nothing but darkness and silence and oblivion. It takes us nowhere. And the second says, but certainly we'll meet Mother, and she'll take care of us. The first goes, Mother? You actually believe in Mother? If Mother exists, where is she now? And the second goes, she's all around us. We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world would not and could not exist. And the first says, I don't see her. It's only logical that she's not here. To which the second replied, sometimes when you're in silence and you really listen, you can perceive her presence. You can hear her loving voice calling down from above.
To experience God's character and to debate God's character. Speaking as somebody, you guys, who has done both, those two things, they will not bring you to the same destination. Knowing therefore the terror of the Lord, we persuade men. This is a verse that has just gripped me, honestly. I think it is second, someone will have to correct me, but I think it is 2 Corinthians 5 verse 11. The logic need not be coercion, okay? I believe it can be reasonable, rational persuasion born from conviction. Paul does not say, I possess truth, therefore I dominate. Though that honestly sounds like a lot of Christianity today. That is why, it's another conversation for another day, but that's why I'm not very sympathetic to it, to corporate Christianity. Anyways, point is, Paul says, I have encountered something I believe has transformed me, and therefore I cannot remain indifferent to those I know who are lost. I think you can hold that position in any belief system, genuinely. And even if it means you believe in nothing, seriously. Anyway, instead, I think of projecting diagnoses of illnesses onto situations and onto people we're not quite in the position to impose. I've decided personally to approach my relationship with Shay and everything she says as an opportunity to audit myself. Is my persuasion in what I believe, like internally, defined more by my disagreement with her or by genuinely independent persuasion? What in my life can I lean onto as true without leaning on my uncomfortability with what somebody else believes? That has become so essential to me because I'm realizing, you guys, that conviction and domination are always conflated in these types of conversations, but they're not the same thing. I don't think we do it deliberately, but I think that we need to get we need to get some academic precision in what we're actually talking about. Conviction says, I've found something I believe to be true, I believe to be good, and my genuine desire is that others taste of that goodness, encounter that goodness. I desire genuinely that others would encounter it, right? That others will be able to taste of the freedom that I have experienced. But domination is different because domination says, I have found something that I believe to be true. And the thing is, it might be objectively true, but with domination, you will find that disagreement is a threat to their existence. The first, right, genuine conviction, that is persuasion. But the second, domination, that's clear insecurity. And perhaps this principle extends far beyond Christianity, A person with any worldview can ask the same question. If I truly believe that my framework produces greater human flourishing, peace, greater coherence, greater alignment, am I inviting others genuinely towards what I believe is good? Or am I merely defending myself from the discomfort of encountering difference? Because there is a subtle psychological danger that exists in every ideology. Sometimes we don't know what we actually believe independently. We only know what we reject. A conviction built primarily on opposition is fragile because it requires the existence of an enemy to sustain itself. If your faith, for whatever it is you believe in, you could be religious, you could not be religious, it really it does not matter. But if it constantly requires you to encounter an opposing force, then perhaps you don't genuinely possess conviction, Perhaps you just possess reaction. Reaction is not the same thing, as revelation or intellectualism or critical thinking. And even with this video, I don't know that I'm entirely trying to react to Shay, and I hope it doesn't come off that way. I I don't want to be the only one like talking about this. Like, feel free to disagree. Like, the purpose of these videos, at least here, is not to create an echo chamber where you guys are watching a video and you're told that I have an objective, neutral position. And so I'm telling you of the situation in purely objective terms. Like, no, there is a reason I tell you that, guys, I'm coming into this with this set of principles, with this set of beliefs, with this set of convictions, and I want you to form yours against mine and find your own. But it doesn't mean I'm going to be apologetic about my own, and neither should you. I would like people to get to a place where your convictions survive, even if the person you disagreed with disappeared tomorrow. The strongest forms of faith that I have personally encountered are not the faiths that have never encountered discomfort. No, they are the ones that have wrestled with discomfort, that have been like ruined by discomfort and come out with greater understanding. It doesn't always have to be understanding that agrees with the nature of the opposition. We need to become capable of saying, okay, I have wrestled with this, and I've seen, like, witnessing somebody else wrestle and come to a different place doesn't necessarily mean that they are ill. Wrestling genuinely with something always transforms you. It always marks you. It always, you coming out differently, like on the other end. It doesn't always mean that the person is insane, you know. Other important nature about Christianity is that it literally requires you to die to yourself and become a different person. And so when someone loses like their entire personality due to the faith, like, that's kind of what Christianity like does, you know. It's the whole incentive is to become more like Jesus. Yeah, I'm still wrestling with a few things, but I think this is a good place to end things. Yeah. Unfortunately, again, I don't have like a finalizing through line for this video, but if you enjoyed it, if you have anything to say, if you have anything, that is anything to discuss, please put it in the comment section. Let's have a conversation. Otherwise I will see you hopefully very soon. You take care. Thank you for giving me your ear, your time, your patience. I will see you when I see you. Stay well, stay safe, and goodbye.